Hi, my name is Ken. It has been a pleasure for the past 5 years to work with Pike County Schools in building a culture of health to turn the tide on suicide in your community. In May of 2014, we began our relationship with you. That year, we did the ASSIST workshop, otherwise known as Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. All the counselors came in for that. The following year, we did Listen, Learn, Lead, which is a 5-hour block of instruction. And I believe a lot of you guys have taken that workshop or some form of it. And we've done something with you every year since May of 2014. And I'm very excited about it because you guys are leading the charge on the turning of the tide in suicide and building a culture of health. Everywhere I go, I share with other communities, other school districts, what you're doing in Pike County because you are making a difference in the school district, and you'll begin to understand that a little bit better as we go through the remainder of our time together. Your superintendent, Dr. Duncan, and Director of Student Services, Mr. Green, attended the first training in May of 2014. Since then, they've become not only dear friends, but they are strong advocates for intervention training, mandating a course of action more than a year in advance of state legislation in 2015 called the Jason Flat Act, requiring all teachers to be trained in intervention. Today, in compliance with state law, but more importantly, because of the culture of health that Pike County is committed to building, we are looking again at the subject of suicide. It's what I call the Intervene Challenge. It's a challenge because often in our busy lives, our vigilance can wane and we fail to see the risk. Recently, I saw a Facebook post where a parent had made the comment, "My son is struggling in school and he's afraid that he won't graduate." Let's talk about that one for just a moment. I was in a school district not long ago where a counselor called the parent and said, "We're concerned about your child because we believe that he's having thoughts of suicide." The parent came back with, "There's no way my child would ever think of suicide. That's ridiculous. He's just worried about his school, worried about getting into college. He's got a lot of stuff going on, but there's no way that he would ever be suicidal." I'll be quite honest. When I was in elementary school and high school, I was not the best student. It took me time to learn how to learn, for one thing. I goofed off a lot and I just didn't pay attention. And it was not until my graduate and postgraduate work that I finally started getting serious about making good grades. And I did make good grades, but difficult subjects take time to learn. And you have students that are struggling with difficult subjects. And that may be one of the reasons why they have the idea of suicide. There's a challenge in their life and it's overwhelming them. The stress of being in AP classes, the stress of all the extracurricular activities that they're involved in. Simply being a teenager puts them at risk. But folks, I'm not even talking about the subjects that we teach in school. I'm talking about the subject of suicide. It's a difficult subject for us to talk about. It's difficult for us to want to learn how we can make a difference because it's a stigmatized subject. Suicide is part of our culture, but we don't know what to do many times to change the culture. I was up in Cleveland, Ohio recently for a veterans event, and I shared with those veterans that right down the road in the school district in Cleveland, Ohio, in the past year, 2 out of 10 teenagers in the school system have attempted suicide. There's a culture of suicide today that we don't know how to talk about, but it is part of our culture. And so understanding that we need to change the culture begins by understanding that we have to be able to discuss difficult, challenging subjects that are sometimes hard to learn. Henry David Thoreau wrote in his book, Walden, published in the 1800s, "It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see." And that's kind of the theme I want us to focus in on today. It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. What is the parent who's looking at his son who's struggling in his grades, what does he see? He's obviously not seeing what he needs to see. He just sees that child struggling, goofing off, not applying himself, when in reality, what he ought to see is that processes that are going on in that child's mind where he's feeling inferior. Maybe he's having identity crisis issues. Maybe he just broke up with his girlfriend and he's feeling hopeless. You don't see the feelings that are going on in their mind. We just see the poor grades. We see the goofing off. Those are the things that we see. It's not what we look at that matters, it's what we see. I can't tell you how many funerals I've been to due to suicide where I've heard the words, "We didn't see that coming." It's not what we look at that matters, it's what do you see. So what do you see when the star of the football team is sitting in your class on Monday morning and you were at that game on Friday night? And you know that everybody there in the community was there, 3,000 fans in the stadium. Scouts from the SEC are there at the game to look at him because they're thinking about giving this kid a scholarship, and he blows the Friday night game. Not only that, he goes to the homecoming dance afterward, even though he didn't want to, because the game just really kicked him in the rear end. And his girlfriend breaks up with him. And she'd been planning to break up with him. She never told him that, but it was all predicated upon whether or not he won the game. And so he loses the game and he loses his girlfriend. He thinks that he's lost his chance at a scholarship. Is it possible that this 17, 18-year-old young man is having thoughts of suicide? I'm going to tell you, yes, it is, because it's not what we look at that matters, it's what we see. And the reality is this: circumstances are the most important thing. It's not about the signs that we see, it's about the circumstances. What about the female soccer player who's counting on that scholarship to her mother's alma mater, where she had also played soccer? But one night after graduation, before her college career begins, she gets a DUI. And now she's having to spend $10,000 on DUI court. And also, the scholarship fell through because it was a character-based scholarship, and the coaches are adamant about their kids not drinking alcohol and getting in trouble. Is it possible, based on the circumstances that she's in, that she might be having thoughts of suicide? It doesn't matter whether she is physically in shape and she's athletic. It doesn't matter whether she's putting on that Sunday go to church smile, as we often say, and she's not told any of her friends. The reality is the circumstances are there for the possibility that she might be having thoughts of suicide. So what should we see? Well, first of all, we should see that suicide is a process. It's not like an accident that suddenly happens. And here's the thing about signs. If signs are present at all, and with many teenagers there are no signs, then we need to be taking immediate action. Just like someone who's been in an accident and their life is at risk, we need to be taking immediate action when we see the signs. But remember, with teenagers especially, sometimes there are no signs. So if there are any signs at all, they are pointing us to circumstances in that person's life that overwhelming their coping mechanism. Therefore, we need to take immediate action. It may sound contrary, but suicide is not the result of wanting to die. It is the result of loss that leads to thoughts of hopelessness. Your courage to engage in difficult subjects is often a vital component in the ability of others to rediscover hope and find within themselves the personal resilience that they didn't know they had. So, what's the difference between signs and circumstances? First of all, signs are the things that people say or do, it's the changes in behavior. And keep in mind, 1 out of 5 teens will show no signs of suicidal risk. Circumstances are the challenges that impact personal resilience. It's where we ask ourselves, what's going on in that person's life? Any change in circumstance can create a transition point that negatively impacts personal resilience. So we need to be aware of circumstances more so than signs a lot of times. When it comes to changing the culture, it's not just teaching students, it's knowing them. If we're going to keep this momentum going of having a zero suicide school zone, then we have to be aware of the circumstances of life that create the transition points where suicidal thoughts germinate and take root. Being aware of these transition points is the first step in providing intervention care. We need to be alert to failed relationships and family history and prior attempts and poor social skills and depression and financial stress and access to lethal means and all the other things that go into creating a suicide risk. And I know I don't have to tell you guys as teachers, keep in mind the teen years, the perfect storm. You got hormones, risky behavior, cyberbullying, all the things that are going on in a teen's life that can potentially put them at risk. So when that is a possibility, you be the one that can help. When you see the signs or you become aware of the circumstances, take time to build rapport. And keep in mind that getting to the question of suicide can happen far more quickly than most people think. Possible lead in questions might be, I can see that thinking about the blank, whatever it is, in this case, the pajamas for little Ralphie, it's painful. I can see that thinking about your parents' divorce is painful. I can see that the fact that your girlfriend broke up with you is painful. This is a lead in question. I'm almost a little bit embarrassed to say it, but I actually put on a big pink bunny outfit and we do a program on my Facebook page just to raise awareness about the pink bunny and how to ask that question as a lead-in question. I can see that thinking about blank, whatever blank is, and name it, I can see that that's painful. That's a lead-in question. Other leading questions that we discuss in the Listen, Learn, Lead workshop. How well are you sleeping? Because if they're not sleeping well, they're not thinking well. And we know that that can impact a person's mental health ability. When was the last time you had a good meal? Because if they're not eating right, they're not going to be thinking well. Nutrition fills the brain and fuels the brain to think and operate properly. Another great lead-in question, what are you telling yourself? What are you telling yourself? And if they come back and say, well, I just feel like my family would be better off without me, or I wish that I could just go to bed and not wake up. Those are very pointed responses, and we need to hear what they're saying. What we tell ourselves becomes that monkey on our back, and it drives us. And if that's what they're telling themselves, they're being driven further and further into this deep, dark hole, and it gets harder and harder to get out of it. Before we actually get to that all important question of suicide, sometimes you can preface it by making the following statement. Sometimes when people are going through things like you're going through, they have thoughts of suicide. Pause for a moment and then ask, are you having thoughts of suicide? You do it in a friendly, non-judgmental, almost monotone way. You're not excited, non-judgmental, very important. But are you having thoughts of suicide? Recently, I was working with a group of young people, teenagers, middle and high schoolers. We were talking about just brainstorming. What is a friend? And one of the discussions that came up is they felt like loyalty was important. So here's the thing. Students will often start a conversation with a friend. I'm going to tell you something, but you have to promise me that you won't tell anyone. A loyal friend is not necessarily one who keeps secrets, but one who is willing to keep safe a friend that is hurting. This is a place where the school system can really drill down, in my opinion. We talk about character and virtues, and loyalty is a strong virtue that we all like to have in our friends and those around us. It's not about keeping secrets. It's about keeping my friends safe. And so I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep my friends safe. And you may be mad at me for telling the counselor or telling the teacher, but I love you too much to let you hurt yourself. So I'm going to keep you safe. Far more important than keeping secrets. This is an area where the schools can really drill down because you guys deal with it all the time. Students get told things by their friends. It always cracks me up. I'm going to tell you something, but you got to promise me that you won't tell anybody. That's twisted. I may not want to hear it then if you're fixing to tell me something I've got to promise to like that. So, loyalty. I don't necessarily keep secrets, I keep safe. So, what's the next step for you as a teacher? Well, first of all, you always follow safety guidelines set forth by your employer. You follow the protocols and the procedures that are mandated to you as a school teacher. But remember, your strength and your courage in times of challenge provides assurance to those individuals that are hurting. And so we don't want to scare them. We don't want to put them in a straitjacket. It's very rare that someone is going to be put in the back of an ambulance. It does happen, but that's rare. What individuals who are having thoughts of suicide need the most is someone who's got big ears and is willing to listen to them. And then the next step, let's do what we need to do to make sure that you stay safe and follow the procedures that are set forth by your employer. I know that as teachers, you are busy with reports and compliance and all the other things that you guys have got to do. But when it comes to suicide, time is the essential element. It is the essential ingredient in this thing that we call life, and as valuable as the air we breathe. The two go hand in hand, and you can't have one without the other. And so we have to take time to listen to those who are hurting, learn what's going on in their lives if we're going to lead them to a place of safety. My friend Kevin Briggs served as an officer in the California Highway Patrol, and he's done a whole lot of suicide interventions just like I have. We were doing a discussion one night on Facebook with a bunch of folks that were listening, and someone said, "What's the difference between you two guys?" I said, "Well, Kevin is the last line of defense. He's the guy on the bridge. I'm the one trying to keep people from getting to the bridge, that bridge of despair. And the best way to do that is to personally be the bridge of hope." So, my encouragement to you guys, be the bridge of hope for those that are hurting. Be aware of what's going on in people's lives. Look for the circumstances, not just the signs. What are the circumstances? Because remember, teenagers will oftentimes not show any signs of risk at all. So circumstances trump signs with teenagers. After a student has confided in you, be sure to thank the student for what they did, to share this intimate detail of their life that they're struggling with between life and death. I know it wasn't easy, but because you did, I have great hope for you. So let's do what it takes to get you through these challenges. And thank you so much for sharing with me. We are just about through, and here's the exciting part that I've been waiting to share with you. Since the implementation of suicide intervention training in May of 2014, Pike County Schools has maintained 100% zero suicide rate. That's unheard of, and I'm so excited that you guys are moving in a positive direction. So my hat is off to you in that regard. I salute you for what you're doing. Let's keep up the good work. What do we need to do to sustain zero suicides? Let's look at that for just a moment. Sustaining success in Pike County Schools means we're moving forward in maintaining personal vigilance, but we're also aware of the risk within the community as a whole. That's very, very important. So here's the big picture for Pike County moving forward. From 2008 to 2017, that's the most recent data we have, there's been 31 suicide fatalities within the community. That's a rate 43% higher than the state. Why is this important? Because higher risk are reported among students that have experienced the loss of a family member or friend to suicide. So if you have students that have experienced loss, you need to be drilling down with them, checking in on them, making sure that they're okay because they do have a higher risk. Throughout the state of Georgia, here's what we know. There's been a 66% increase in suicide statewide since 2008 for those under the age of 24. That rate shoots up to 74% when we look at just the 15 to 19 year age group. 74% increase for teenagers since 2008. So to recap, intervention saves lives, engaging takes courage, and compassionate care transforms community. As a community resource, be sure to put 1-800-715-4225 in your personal phone and use it as a resource when you need to. It is the Georgia Crisis and Access Line. Georgia is the first state in the nation to have mobile crisis statewide. And so the crisis mobile team can come out and assist you as needed. Another resource is Macintosh Trail, not far away from you guys, and they are available as a resource as well. Thank you for all you do to serve students in the community. I wish you all a great and successful coming year.